Well, this is Wednesday, the 19th of April, 2017. Just stopped at a place I call the Tennet'S Farm, yeah. I remember the time when my sons and I used to sit in those bushes right there, call fox down off of that field, but I see the state got some little trees in there with stakes now planted. We called two foxes, came down out of those trees. And when we first started calling here, we sat right there. We backed up our backs to those bushes. That was about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night in November. And we caught their eyes up there. They came out of the trees on top of the hill down into these trees and then stepped right out right there and then looked toward us. We got quite a few foxes out of here through the years. We also had coyotes come down through here and surround us and stay back out of the way a little way. Well, this is called Tennet'S. I first started squirrel hunting here, but it's higher on the ridge. I thought I'd just walk up here. There's something just went running across my field of view from right to left. I think it was a white-tailed deer. It was brown. Didn't make any noise at all. Ran real fast from that right side over to the left. We're up on a hill by the trees that I showed you first of all that the Game Commission planted. We're in a little field leading off to the side of them. Up into the bigger trees are on top up here. Into where I used to do a lot of squirrel hunting when I was in my later teens. There's some beautiful little wild violets coming into bloom at this time of year. And some wild mustard starting to bloom. That's the yellow that you see there. And then the honeysuckle bush. The vine stays green all winter, but the bush dies. But it's the first thing to get its green leaves in the spring around here. Now it's even got some blooms on it. And the mayapple, the little umbrellas at the base of the trees there. And down there. I think I'm going to walk on up through there and see what's up in the trees. When I hunted out here, this was a little bit of an unusual place because you'd never believe that there'd be squirrels in it. The trees were so, they weren't very big around. They might have been 40 feet tall, but they were of small diameter. But the gray squirrels built nests in there, and they were really plentiful. But there's a lot of banks in there and vines and small trees, but it was really great for squirrel hunting. One other thing, this was a place where you could almost always see a great horned owl trying to hide from the crows in the daytime to get himself a little bit of sleep. I think I'm going to well, here's where there's an interesting tree laying right there, because that tree is off at the bottom. There's no stump there. It was brought in here, laid up against that one it's leaning on. I see in the distance, it looks like over the hills, gray clouds. Probably got a rainstorm coming. Might get me up in here. Boy, the woodpecker's been working on that one. The wild cherry tree. It looks like a big old shagbark hickory right up there. Maybe that's why the squirrels is always in here. I think this place has quite a few of them in here. Oh yeah. There's another big old shagbark hickory. They don't get much bigger than that. And there's another one to my left. A lot of May-apples up in here. I mean a bow, whatever you want to call it, a bend. It was hooked onto the other little trees growing up from the ground down there. I learned of this woods through my uncle, Frank. He brought me out here a time or two when I was just old enough to be allowed to hunt, maybe 12. I came back out several years later when I was still in my late teens. Boy, it did have squirrel in it. I see why now. It's just full of shagbark hickories. It looked like maybe a walnut here or there. I want to walk on up. Now there's a tree bend. Twisted right up here at the forks. Looks like it's sassafras. Bowed over and bent down to the ground there. And there is what appears to be, I was going to say the top of it, but the diameter of that looks to be bigger than where I supposed it broke off of. But it's holding down the bend, whether that's the top of it or not. Here's what it looks like from this side. I don't know what that is. Looks like a tree bend. Some old sticks there together. see. Over that way. Yeah, let's see. That'd be about 10 o'clock if this is 12. About 10 o'clock from the way I'm facing here. Several years back, I was out checking out different trees and woods and areas that I hadn't been into before. But once again, looking for ginseng or woods to hunt it in. Excuse me. And I went up behind a big stone quarry that had been abandoned years and years previous to that, and got up into some trees and kept going up and up and up until it leveled out, got flat on top. Trees were still big. I was still in the woods. I can hear some crows off behind me, but I was still in the woods. There was still trees, but in this particular place there was a little woods inside of the big woods, where the big trees had their crowns come together maybe 40 feet off of the ground or so. Underneath that was these little trees. Maybe they were just like big bushes or something, but they had crowns to them in the main trunk, and all of their crowns formed like a round area, like a green cloud, you might say, in the otherwise much bigger woods. And it was about well, the bottom of it was about 4.5 or 5 feet off of the ground, and the trees themselves were just about 12 feet tall. Just enough to block your vision when you're walking through the big tree, so you couldn't see like you wanted to. So I stopped before entering into it, trying to decide whether I should crouch down and try to waddle all the way through it. It looked to be about 60 or 80 feet across. It was circular in shape. Or should I maybe just skirt it, stay into the big trees and walk around it? And I hated to do that because I wouldn't know what it was like in there, and I might miss some nice ginseng. So as I was considering those things, I heard something a pounding the ground, coming and running head first, like at me. It sounded like what I've heard before when a bull was running through the field. And so my attention was drawn to that, and I started to look to see if I could see what it was, because I could hear it was coming closer and closer to me, but for the life of me, I couldn't see it. And when it got to the other side of those trees, it stopped dead still. And I didn't know to go around it or to go under it like I was thinking before. With this thing there, I thought, I'd like to know what in the world that was. Big and heavy and stomping the ground, coming right at me. So I just squatted down and looked for a minute or two. And not being satisfied that I couldn't see anything, I just started, waddling while I was squatted. And I got, probably 20, 30 feet out through there, and stopped and looked, and I could not see a thing. And then I heard it starting to mill around, stomping the ground, and I got the feeling that, I don't know, I just felt like I wasn't fooling anybody, that it knew I was there. So I kept going until I got 2/3 of the way through that area, and I could see out the remainder of it. I couldn't see anything. And I heard it walking around just outside of these little trees, but I couldn't see it. So instead of going on through, I went off to my right where I could stand up. And I went out into the big trees and skirted it and looked back at the whole situation to see what that was on the far side of it, stomping on the ground. It never stomped again. And I never did see what it was. And I felt like my ears and my eyes are supposed to work together, you know. I could hear the thing, should have been visible because it was right there. I could hear it, but I could not see it. That was probably a mile and a half the way the crow flies off 11 o'clock from me. When I was ginseng hunting, I was thinking about ginseng. When I was squirrel hunting, I was thinking about squirrel. I know there's a lot of people that just like to kill things. So they go squirrel hunting and see a groundhog in the woods, they're liable to shoot it. Or a coon, possum, anything. I couldn't do that. I felt funny about shooting a red fox once when I was squirrel hunting, even though I was a trapper and I had pelts at home. And I kept these pelts and took them in, you know, every fall. And I took a fox or two while I was squirrel hunting after I got over it, because it just made me feel odd shooting something that I wasn't hunting for. So why'd I tell you that? Because I was really focused on what I was doing. I wasn't thinking about Bigfoot or forest people of any size, whether their foot was big or small. So it just never entered my mind to start researching other things. And I think I've probably seen a lot of wood structures and maybe even stopped and thought, now how did that get like that? But it never occurred to me that there might be some spirit being, some forest being in the woods, even though I told my wife all my life, ever since for 50 years that we've been married, that when I was out in the woods I never felt alone, that there was some presence out there. And to me, it feels like an authoritative presence, but not a scary one. One that I respect, but I'm not afraid of. At least not yet. But I always felt that there was a presence that accompanied me through the woods. No stump. It was brought in here. I don't even know what's holding it. Nope. Even that other one's been brought in here. It's caught on a limb of a beech tree. And this is a wild cherry laying up on it, stuck there somehow. Well, looks like something's been digging around, scratching like wild turkeys or something up in here. Well, look at that. That is a very old stump. You see it? That was cut down, I don't know, the way it's deteriorating, probably 60 or 80 years ago. And that limb back here, caught up on that grapevine, looks as old as it is. Look at that. How did that get placed up through that grapevine, which is not nearly as old? It's still living, still growing, still alive, and yet that old dead thing somehow rose up on that forked end and got itself hooked on the grapevine. Something put that there. Those things, the vine and the thing on it, are separated by a lot of time. One's much older than the other. Look how them woodpeckers drilled holes in that wild cherry tree, made that one vertical and elongated on near the bottom. This is not natural. Something placed this thing on that vine. I want to work my way out. I'm going to look around here for a little bit more. Then I'm going to work my way out that way and back down the hill to the car. Boy, look at that bend up there, top of that tree. A couple of things stuck in that one. There's another old timer. Look at that old thing, that old limb, log, tree, whatever you want to call it. Somehow it laid on the ground for a long time. Stump's not there. And that end rose up and stuck itself between the forks of that young tree that's still alive. No. I don't know why. Whether it's Bigfoot, you know, Sasquatch, or the little forest people, or who it is, why they have this proclivity to make things like that. Over there's one. All these are old, no bark on them, lifted up off of the ground and placed back up again. You know, they made it once to the ground, there they are, back up again. Because as old as they are, they probably laid on the ground longer than the tree they're on now has been growing. Well, something's been messing these leaves up here. They're all kicked around on top of this ridge. They're all shuffled about. Looks like, I keep saying turkeys. You know, I feel like turkeys come through here scratching them, looking for something to eat. There's a limb there, big end up, stuck around that tree. There seems like a lot going on around here, up in this place. There's look at that. And up there. And down there. Looks like that emerald borer beetle getting the best of a big old ash tree right there. You can see the ash tree starts to shed its bark, as I mentioned before. Looks like that old grapevine been growing through the Y in that tree for a long time. There's some parallel limbs going across the woods. Another lean up there, but back to this ash. Underneath it, there a piece of bark just fell off. Look at the holes in there where the borer beetle bored its way in, laying eggs in there. Look like somebody shooting it with a .22 rifle. Then the old tree starts shedding its bark, and look what's under it. You can see where the larva has been crawling around underneath. Oh, that's all underneath all of this bark, all the way up there. And from what I understand, that's another parasite from Asia. Yeah, so when you get up top here and you look at the woods that we used to hunt in years ago, called Tennet'S, there was a lot of squirrel in here, deer, and a lot of the times you'd see great horned owls. But it is a lot bigger up in here. The trees are a lot bigger diameter than what it looks like when you first start in here. But if you bring your old shotgun and come on up in here and get quiet for a little while, man, the woods just come alive with squirrels in the fall. Yep. There's another one of them things that looks like it was placed instead of falling and bouncing around and ending up like that. Look how old that is. That's been laying on the ground, weathering, rain, rotting. Somehow it's laid on top of that one, which seems to be just as old. And there's another one. Laid right through the forks of that. Yeah, there's been something up here because this place is all scratched up. Leaves all moved around. There's another lane. Got a little fork right on top. I went around this other tree that it fell on, or that it was placed on. Here's another one. Whatever's up in here likes to lean a lot of things up. Now the ground is still scratched up. Now I've walked out through here 50 yards or 60. Now look how that is leaning up on that. The one is still growing. It's a lot younger, but this old one is once again an old one picked up off of the ground and leaned up on it. This is Tennet'S, as I said earlier. But we've crossed up to the top of the ridge, although it's still part of the old Tennet'S Farm. Out this way is a valley called Craig's Hollow. And it empties out on a road that leads into a little town called Ceylon. Now, that's a maple. How did that limb get brought down and stuck underneath that much older log? If you look out through the trees there, the field opening out there made by, I think is it Chevron Appalachia? Maybe it's one of the oil companies that got a oil and gas well out there, and they cut these trees out, made an access road up to it so they can gather up the oil they've collected out of old Penn's Woods. You know, that's where oil was first discovered in the United States. It was Titusville, Pennsylvania, north of here. Northeast of Pittsburgh, maybe 40 or 50 miles or so. Titusville. Look at that. Well, there's so much going on in here. Well, now how did that get bent over like that? Young maple tree bent down and tucked somehow underneath an old rotten wild cherry. I don't know where it come from. That's a pretty big lean there. Now I don't want to get going down over there. That's the wrong side of the ridge, because down over there is where my wife is waiting in the Ford Escape, and I think I better start getting back. Maybe I should take a minute, stop and contact her on the phone. I think I will, if everything's okay. Is everything okay, Viv? I'm up on top of the ridge. I walked my way up to the top till I got to the big trees of Tennet's, then went out the ridge to the right, and I'm down the road a ways, the way the car is facing, up on top, and I'm going to start working my way back down. Has anybody come by? I just want to make sure you're okay, because if I just keep working the way I am, it'll probably take me another 20 minutes or so to get down there. Odd. Okay, I just sent Vivian a text message. She didn't answer it, although the phone says it was delivered. So I called, and she didn't answer the phone. So I left a voice message. I'm up on top of the ridge and I can get the cell towers easy. But she's down in the valley in the bottom there. So I don't know what's going on. I'm going to have to get to walking down there and find out. The tree leans around here. Old trees picked up off the ground and leaned through the forks or up against much younger trees. I don't know why, they just don't leave this stuff on the ground. They'll pick it up and lean it up against something. All over the place. Leans up in here and bends. The neck's on the ground. So much going on up in here. I really haven't noticed the ground very much. Well, there's a neat double bend there. Way down out of here. Tried to make contact with Viv a little bit ago by phone and by text message and couldn't get through to her. But I think this is an area here where we need a few more cell towers. I got through to the tower on top. It said the message is delivered, but she didn't respond. She's way down in the valley, and I don't think she's got signal strength down there. So I'm going down out of here. It's time to go anyway. See what's going on. If I can get through that mess. And back down through to the exact same place I entered this area, underneath this vine. right back out to where the trees are planted down there by the game commission. So that looks like an oak tree that the game commission planted. Get a little woodlot started on the hillside here. You can see it did it years ago. Wee little young saplings that they put those protective cylinders around, those sleeves. That one's gone. There used to be one here. Look where those sticks are. Something must have pulled that out of the ground for some reason. And down there is a protective cylinder for it. You think a deer would pull that out and throw that down? What did that? I'll tell you, there's a lot more going on out in nature than people realize. A whole lot more. You in there? Okay. I was just worrying about you. I texted you and I called you and you never answered. Or you never returned my text. So I thought maybe you're down in the valley so far that you didn't have any towers. Now, I did because I was way on top.
Look, I have none from you.
Well, you'll get them when we pull out where the